Heavy fighting broke out in the Rafah area in the Gaza Strip over the last 24 hours, prompting fears of a return to a full-scale war. War? What do you think about that? After 2 years of battles, and despite the ceasefire, Hamas terrorists came out of a tunnel in Rafah and attacked IDF soldiers, resulting in 5 wounded soldiers and the elimination of the terrorists. The IDF has now begun to launch a significant series of strikes inside the Gaza Strip. The incident shows that from the depths of the tunnels, there is continuous contact between the Rafah terrorists and the Hamas leadership, as the strikes are not random but part of a coordinated plan. Now, there is a question about whether the ceasefire will continue, but the Rafah crossing will be open in the coming days for the exit of residents only from the Gaza Strip to Egypt. And meanwhile, internal Hamas documents have been exposed showing how it succeeded in penetrating international aid organizations. In the northern arena, we'll bring you the news from the historic meeting in Lebanon and a statement from the Israeli Prime Minister's office about advancing possible economic cooperation amidst Lebanon's precedent-setting step to prevent escalation. With a wink towards the United States, the internationally recognized government in Beirut said it is committed to dismantling Hezbollah. As an Israeli, I say that we'll believe it when we see it. In any case, United States Special Envoy for Lebanon, Morgan Ortagus, is visiting Israel this week and declared that Hezbollah is arming faster than it is being disarmed. And in related topics, Hezbollah's treasury was destroyed in the war last year, but its pockets are far from empty. Next door in Syria, in the midst of the secret discussion, a story was revealed that no one expected, as a tough battle that surprised the IDF soldiers played out. Now, new details are coming to light, and today we will bring you the approaching move that no one sees vis-a-vis Syria. And further afield, the clock is ticking as Iran is rearming, but also Iran's opponents, as this week the United States revealed a version of the weapon that became Tehran's pride. Welcome to Boots on the Ground. I'm your host Yair Pinto, and this is the weekend edition in which we go over all the headlines that were missed in this week's news. But the big story today is that all the cards were reshuffled in the last 24 hours, so let's go over the headlines. First, in the ceasefire is in question following exchanges of fire between the IDF and the Hamas terrorist organizations in Rafah. An IDF soldier was seriously wounded and 4 others are in moderate condition after terrorists came out of a tunnel in Rafah and set up an ambush against the IDF troops during the ceasefire. Following this Hamas violation of the ceasefire, the IDF is preparing to open a significant series of strikes in the Gaza Strip. This incident highlights one of the toughest challenges that the IDF forces are facing in the Gaza Strip. So infantry Golani Brigade combat teams and their officials operated in the southern parts of the Gaza Strip, and they described fighting characteristics reminiscent of the Battle of Stalingrad in World War II, which is characterized by a dense urban area, ruined buildings, and tunnels. The Chief of Staff demanded an immediate response, declaring that we cannot let this pass in silence. Despite the terrorist organization's claims that the terrorists on the ground act independently, a Palestinian source emphasized in an interview with the Saudi news portal Ashrak al-Awsat that the cells in Rafah operate under the direct guidance of the Hamas leadership. The source added that these are special Hamas fighters in the tunnels and have a combat until they are eliminated. They have been in those tunnels for 10 months, pre-supplied with food and with water, and some of them took part in the release of the hostages. In just a moment, we will bring you all the details and try to understand what the ceasefire rules are with all of Hamas's attacks. Today, we will also expose how Hamas rules the international aid organizations in Gaza by collecting intimate information, checking morality, threats, and appointing coordinators who were in fact Hamas members. Captured documents that were analyzed reveal the cooperation of the world's largest aid organizations with the reign of terror in Gaza. In the north, can we see some hope for Lebanon? Let me know what you think in the comments. But Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sent a representative to a meeting with the government officials in Lebanon this week, while the Lebanese government sent their former ambassador to America as a civilian representative to the Ceasefire Oversight Committee, and he even met face-to-face with an Israeli representative. A statement from the Prime Minister's office said that these meetings could provide a path towards advancing possible economic cooperation. However, Israel also sent a message to Lebanon that dismantling Hezbollah of its weapons is mandatory. And a Western source in Beirut commented that this shows that they want to move forward and not go backwards. Morgan Ortagus, President Trump's special envoy to Lebanon, held meetings yesterday with Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz, in which Israel presented evidence of Hezbollah's remnant in an effort to build legitimacy for a military action. And meanwhile, Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar said Iran is transferring funds to Hezbollah through Turkey. In a closed-door Knesset discussion, Sa'ar also revealed that Israel is conducting talks with Syria with American support for a security arrangement, but conditions any outline on continued control of strategic points such as Mount Hermon and ensuring freedom of action against any kind of threats. And while all of this is going on, a severe warning is coming from over the horizon as the clock is ticking and Iran is rapidly rearming, replacing the missiles that it lost or expended in the 12-day war against Israel in June. But on the other hand, the United States Central Command announced the establishment of a new suicide UAV squadron that will operate drones developed by reverse engineering of the Iranian Shahed 136. An American official said Iran enjoyed an advantage. Now, we are flipping the script. A moment before we begin, I want to say thank you to everyone who at every stage supported and helped us share the truth. So, we are here together fighting the lies and spreading what's happening in Israel. But recently, all the algorithms on social media networks are changing, and we need all the help we can get to share this content with as many people as possible around the world. So guys, make sure to leave a like, leave a comment, and hit the subscribe button so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. And now, we're getting into the news and starting with developments from the Gaza Strip. So the Hamas terrorist organization violated the ceasefire agreement with Israel on Wednesday, and a senior security source stated that we will not let an attempt to harm IDF forces in Gaza pass in silence. A soldier in the Golani reconnaissance unit was seriously wounded in the incident, while 4 others were moderately wounded when terrorists who emerged from a tunnel shaft were identified and eliminated by the Golani reconnaissance unit. However, one of them managed to approach a Namer armored personnel carrier and fire an anti-armor missile, resulting in casualties, and the wounded soldiers were evacuated to Soroka Hospital in Beersheba, in Israel's south. The Air Force is now preparing to carry out a significant wave of strikes, including the elimination of senior operatives inside Gaza. And according to Palestinian reports, there were 5 fatalities from an Air Force strike in the El Mawasi area in the southern parts of the Gaza Strip. The incident on Wednesday afternoon in Rafah demonstrates the very difficult conditions that the IDF is dealing with. According to officers in the Golani Brigade combat team that are operating in Rafah, the fighting characteristics include a dense urban area, destroyed buildings, and underground infrastructure, all of which give Hamas terrorists cover to approach the IDF troops and fire with little or no warning. A senior field commander who fought in the Rafah sector against Hamas terrorists explained to the Walla media portal in Israel that in a normal building, there are windows and entrance opening, rooms and roofs. And in a destroyed building, it's not clear from where a terrorist might come out. It can happen from any space, from any direction. In addition, the terrorists exploit walking alongside or within the rubble to hide from observation or to complicate aerial platforms patrolling the area. The second challenge is the tunnels. a broad, ramified underground domain of Hamas. And the third challenge is time-sensitive targets. Since the terrorists use the rubble in combination with tunnels to move from area to area, the time from a moment of spotting a terrorist until the moment of closing the fire loop from ground and air has greatly shortened. In an area with greater destruction, the challenge is big. The fourth challenge is the imposition of the siege. For the first time in a classic military context, IDF soldiers in the Rafah area are conducting a siege, despite the complexity of imposing a siege in a space that is ostensibly supposed to be free of civilians, uninvolved in terrorism, and which has no supply lines of food or water. And the IDF is proving that it is still learning the military technique, and Hamas, for its part, is proving that it can challenge the forces on the ground. Since the IDF entered along the yellow line in the Gaza Strip, Hamas has claimed that the terrorist cells in Rafah operate independently and without guidance from the military wing's leadership. However, the Northern Gaza Brigade continues to operate out of Gaza City, while the Rafah Brigade is run from Khan Yunis. As a result, the terrorist cells in Rafah are under the direction and the exact command of the brigade based in Khan Yunis, and in turn, they receive instructions from the military wing's leadership. As all of this is going on, attacks against the IDF forces in Rafah continue. However, a Palestinian source reported that the reality on the ground is entirely different, as the terrorists who entrenched themselves in the Rafah tunnels until their elimination spent 10 months underground, moved between tunnels, and ambushed our troops above. They also communicated with their commanders, and they continued to operate even when the IDF entered Rafah. Amidst all of this kinetic activity, all the terror cells hiding in the city's tunnels are in continuous contact with Hamas's senior command. The maintenance of contacts became possible after the military wings brigades changed their deployment following the IDF stabilization on the ground. According to assessments, there are still more than 20 terrorists hiding in the areas between the tunnels and the destroyed buildings. As a reminder, these are tense days in the Gaza Strip against the backdrop of Hamas's attempts to locate the two kidnapped fallen whose bodies remain in Gaza, the Yassam officer Ran Guyali and the Thai citizen Tusiak Rantalak. And in the last 24 hours, remains handed over to the Red Cross and subsequently to Israel were identified as belonging to Rantalak. His family expressed gratitude to Israel for working to bring his remains home to Thailand so they can receive a dignified burial. And at the same time, the combat teams of the Nachal Brigade and the Golani Brigade, together with the Yahalom unit and their fighters, and under the command of the Gaza Division 143, are concentrating their efforts in East Rafah area, and with the goal of destroying the remaining underground routes in the area, and also bringing about the defeat of the terrorists that are sheltering in them. An IDF spokesperson unit statement said that in the last week, more than 40 terrorists were eliminated in route area, and in addition, dozens of shafts and terrorist infrastructures above and below the ground were destroyed. So here at TBN Israel, we will continue to spread the truth. So make sure to share, follow us, follow our social media accounts, but only follow official accounts of Yair Pinto and Mati Shoshani, and make sure to hit the subscribe button so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground.
Did you know you can invest in one of the world's most innovative economies, the nation of Israel, just as easily as you invest in American markets? And that's why today, I'm excited to introduce you to our friends and sponsors at Wise Money Israel, who I've personally known and trusted for many years. Now, their CEO and his family are longtime friends, and I trust them completely. Now, whether you're looking to elevate your 2026 investment strategy, or possibly diversify internationally, or even just support Israel in its economy, Wise Money Israel offers professional guidance to help you participate in one of the world's most dynamic markets. SEC-registered Wise Money Israel manages Israeli stock and bond accounts for investors from over 30 nations who want to capitalize on Israel's position as a global innovation powerhouse. Their Israel-based professionals provide expert access to companies in Israel's traditional and high-growth sectors. As of today, Wise Money Israel manages about $100 million in client assets with integrity and biblical focus. And if you're looking to fulfill your biblical mandate by supporting Israel, we highly recommend that you reach out to them. So click the link below or visit wisemoneyisrael.com/TBN. Again, wisemoneyisrael.com/TBN for a free consultation today.
And now we're getting back into the news. But before we expose Hamas's method of operation and bring you how international human rights organizations are partnering, paying, and employing Hamas terrorists in Gaza, I want to zoom in on Lebanon. United States President Donald Trump's special envoy to Lebanon, Morgan Ortagus, arrived in Israel on Tuesday and met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz, with the head of the Intelligence Directorate, Major General Shlomi Binder, also present in this meeting. So the Israeli official declared in this meeting that the Lebanese army is neither capable or willing to enforce the terms of the ceasefire agreement, especially the disarmament of Hezbollah. In Lebanon, they're trying to leverage the relative calm in tensions with Israel that was recorded under the auspices of Pope Leo XIV's visit to the country of Lebanon in an attempt to prevent the broad Israeli operation that Israel is planning against Hezbollah. But while the Americans are trying with all their might to stop the collapse of the ceasefire agreement, Israel presented the American envoy with the information that it has regarding Hezbollah's attempts to rehabilitate and also rearm. A senior Israeli official said that Israel needs American legitimacy for any step to be decided upon. Even before her meeting with the Prime Minister and the Defense Minister, the American envoy met with Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar, who presented her with the Israeli understandings regarding Hezbollah. He reportedly said during these meetings that the terrorist organization is arming at a much faster pace than it is being disarmed. The responsibility lies with the Lebanese government. Funds are also being transferred from Iran to Hezbollah through Turkey. This must be cut off. In a related story, on Monday, the United States envoy to Syria and Lebanon, Tom Barak, sent a message to the Shia militias in Iraq emphasizing that even if Israel attacks Hezbollah, they are required to stay out of the picture. Otherwise, they will be hit very hard. But there was also some hopeful news coming out of Lebanon this week. In an unprecedented move, the internationally recognized government of Lebanon sent a civilian representative to the ceasefire oversight committee, and he met face-to-face with a senior official in Israel's National Security Council. The Lebanese representative was none other than the country's former ambassador to the United States, Simon Karam. A statement from the office of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that the senior NSC official who met the Lebanese representative is Uri Razniak, the deputy head of the Foreign Policy Division. And according to the statement, Razniak met in Lebanon with President Trump's envoy to Lebanon, Morgan Ortagus, and with relevant Lebanese civilian representatives. A Western source in Beirut, close to the talks, told the Kan News media portal that this is a good sign. And according to him, introducing the civilian figure into the oversight committee shows that they want to move forward and not to go back. However, the source also admitted that the step was not taken with great enthusiasm, but under United States pressure and in an attempt to prevent escalation with Israel and solve the problems. And Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam said this week that his country received messages that the situation is about to escalate without an ultimatum that is being given. The leadership in Beirut considers it important to show that sending the civilian representative was also done with the consent of Hezbollah, and that this is not a step towards establishing relations with Israel. However, it is by no means certain that this direct dialogue will be enough to postpone or cancel Israel's broad operation in Lebanon. In any case, the Prime Minister's office issued an update on Wednesday evening on the historic meeting held in Lebanon, announcing that the deputy head of the Foreign Policy Division in the NSC held a meeting this morning in Nakura, Lebanon, with the United States President advisor on the Lebanese issue, Morgan Ortagus, and with relevant Lebanese civilian representatives. And according to the Prime Minister's announcement, the meeting was held in good spirits, and it was agreed that ideas would be formulated to advance possible economic cooperation between Israel and Lebanon. Israel clarified in the meeting that dismantling Hezbollah of its weapons is mandatory, unrelated to advancing cooperation on the economic issue, but that the parties agreed to hold continued dialogue. And here, at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development on the matter in Lebanon, so keep spreading the truth, share, follow us, and most importantly, don't forget to click the subscribe button so that you remain aligned to what's happening in Israel and know how to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, boots on the ground style. And now, we're switching our focus to Syria before we return to Hamas terrorist organization in the Gaza Strip and its operational cooperation with liberal human rights organizations around the world. This past week, the Air Force was required to go into action in Syria, launching strikes on forces that it pursues of IDF troops as they were extracting themselves from an arrest operation in the village of Beit Jan in the southern region of Syria. Reservists of the 55th Paratroopers Brigade presented 11 kilometers from Israel's border to arrest 3 suspects in terror activity within the El Jama'ah El Ismaiyah organization. According to the force's operation plan, a fire envelope was placed at its disposal that included an artillery battery, mortars, and also a company of Merkava 4 tanks. I love those tanks, by the way. Alongside this, 2 attack helicopters and several UAVs were placed at the ready, circling the Golan Heights area and prepared to respond immediately to any kind of complications. It can now be revealed that from the moment that the force encountered the enemy, the fire center of the IDF's Golan division activated the ground and the aerial fire envelope, and in less than a minute, the 2 attack helicopters that began firing missiles and machine gun fire towards the sources of this fire as identified by the fighters on the ground. The IDF says that the dialogue between the fighters and the division's fire center and from them to the Air Force's command bunker at the Kiryat in Tel Aviv was conducted with clarity and at record speed. The Air Force also understood that fire jets had to be employed to drop heavy munitions in order to prevent the terrorists from increasing their activities against the forces. In less than 15 minutes from the moment of the first shots that were fired at the forces, 2 Air Force fighter jets carried out a strike on the village. The powerful explosion stunned the terrorists and enabled the completion of the evacuation mission of 6 wounded, 3 of whom were seriously wounded, to a helicopter landing zone in the Syrian territory where Air Force helicopters could land and evacuate the wounded to Israeli territory. The helicopters and the fighter jets continued to create a fire umbrella around the force until the last fighter crossed the border into Israel. And this comes in the same week in a closed discussion of the Israeli Knesset's Foreign Affairs and Defensive Committee that was held on Tuesday, as Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar revealed that in recent months talks have been held to examine a possible security arrangement with Syria. Sa'ar emphasized that Israel is interested in examining an arrangement, but only under conditions that will ensure its security and its freedom of action along the northern border. From Sa'ar's remarks, it emerged that, for Israel, any future outline must include the continued control of strategic high points, foremost amongst them Mount Hermon, which are considered a central component of the IDF's warning and response capabilities in the north. And sources present at the discussions noted that his position reflects a clear political security line, according to which Israel will not agree to territorial changes that would limit its freedom of action against threats in the Syrian and also in the Lebanese areas. The closed discussion was also held against the backdrop of growing tensions along the border with Syria since the changes of the rule in Damascus and the continued entrenchment of pro-Iranian militias in the southern parts of the country. Israel has been carrying out frequent strikes against Syrian military targets and logistical targets that are connected to hostile organizations. The strikes are intended to block the transfer of precision weapons and reduce the deployment of forces that are threatening the Golan Heights. And at the same time, quiet contacts have been conducted in recent months with the support of Washington, which is trying to stabilize the arena and reduce the level of friction between Jerusalem and Damascus. As part of the American efforts, diplomatic talks are being held with the parties in order to examine steps that would lead to a limited security arrangement on the border, an agreement that would focus on limited heavy Syrian forces near the borderline and on reducing Israeli strikes in the Syrian territory. We will now move on to a topic that I think is very important for you to know and be able to convey to as many people as possible, because it is conclusive proof that human rights organizations have cooperated and are cooperating with a murderous terrorist organization like Hamas. Internal documents of Hamas's security apparatus in the Gaza Strip, exposed and analyzed by the Research Institute NGO Monitor, describe a comprehensive, systematic, years-long picture of infiltration, control, and espionage within international aid organizations operating in the Gaza Strip. Among the organizations are Doctors Without Borders, Oxfam, Save the Children, the Norwegian Refugee Council, NRC, Mercy Corps, ANERA, and many others. The documents originating from Hamas's Ministry of Interior and National Security and the internal security mechanisms in Gaza provide a rare glimpse into Hamas's mechanism of control over the humanitarian aid system and the quiet cooperation that aid organizations have maintained with it for years. One of the most prominent findings in the documents is a network of 55 coordinators who are actually senior Palestinian employees inside 48 foreign organizations. These are approved by Hamas and tasked with serving as a direct liaison cell between the organization and the leadership of the aid organizations. Hamas defines them in its documents as assets that can be exploited for security purposes to penetrate foreign NGOs, their senior foreign staff, and their movements on the ground. And according to the organization's instructions, the coordinators must hold senior positions, including director, deputy director, and chair of the board, in order to ensure access to the highest management levels and to crucial projects. An internal document from December 2022 reveals that at least 10 of the coordinators are directly identified with Hamas, and some are members of the movement, while others are former activists or employees in Hamas institutions. Amongst notable cases, the director of MAP UK in Gaza is defined as an operative in the Izzadin el-Qassam brigades. The director of Human Appeal in Gaza belongs to the Hamas movement. The CEO of Civitas operates within the movement's Dawa groups since the first Intifada, popular uprising against Israel. The director of IMC in Gaza holds the rank of Nakib, equivalent to an officer within Hamas. A coordinator in the American organization CRS is identified with the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine group, which took part in the October 7th massacre. The documents reveal a comprehensive surveillance apparatus that Hamas operates against employees of international organizations, including the collection of personal data, political background, religious society ties, correspondence, and conduct on social media networks. It also includes phone investigations and the confiscation of embarrassing personnel photos. There were also reports that were made about non-cooperating employees, including notes such as, his level of religious observance is low, he might be a communist, he leaves home dressed immodestly, or they have been in an immoral relationship. All of this serves as a blackmail apparatus that enables Hamas to bend employees who refuse to cooperate, and at the same time, employees sheltering under pressure exerted by the organization are documented. And for instance, an NRC employee who, according to the documents, was caught with private photos of another employee, a senior figure at Oxfam classified as a threat due to being Jewish, and coordinators defined as moral suspects on the basis of rumors and personal information. The documents show that all organizations operating in Gaza must maintain constant contact with Hamas's Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Social Development under its control, and are not permitted to operate projects without the organization's approval. And furthermore, according to the documents, Hamas imposes compulsory financial and administrative audits, including demands for the transfer of full documentation. In addition, it acts by closing offices of organizations that do not cooperate. For example, the IMC office was closed for a week after the NGO refused to transfer reports, and ANERA was forced to undergo an audit after prolonged resistance, during which numerous financial violations were found. One of the most serious developments appearing in the documentation is the use of beneficiary lists that were prepared by Hamas itself, and many of them were used by international organizations and even the United Nations without further vetting. Thus, the terrorist organization ensures that financial aid and food are channeled to the activists intended with it, to families that Hamas wishes to reward, to areas with military priority. A document from June 2021 reveals how Hamas closely tracked an Oxfam water project in a sensitive border area. And according to the report, it is an area of security importance on both sides of the border. Also, the fruit trees in the area serve as cover for resistance activities. The executing company, Rai Consult, constitutes a founders and employees identified with Hamas, and all employees that are classified in the document received a rating of excellent in moral and security terms, so to speak. Hamas even changed the project's characteristics to suit its military needs, using civilian infrastructure as cover for military assets. In additional cases, Hamas demanded that deletion of questions from surveys conducted as part of humanitarian projects in order to prevent the exposure of terror infrastructure or the identification of Hamas operatives. And according to the NGO Monitor, the international aid organizations operating in the Gaza Strip are well aware of the cohesive conditions and Hamas's control, but do not report this. At times, they even adopt some of the narratives that serve Hamas in the international arena. Instead of exposing the depth of the penetration, some organizations tend to blame Israel for so-called delays, restrictions, or logistical difficulties. And thus, the report claims that provide Hamas with a public safety net and burnished its image. Professor Gerald Steinberg, founder and president of the NGO Monitor, says that the exposure of the documents comes at a time when the international aid community is planning to inject billions of dollars into Gaza's reconstruction. According to him, governments and international organizations intend to cooperate with a range of NGOs to rebuild infrastructure, provide municipal services, and disrupt grants and payments, distribute them. So we now know which organizations and local associations support Hamas's terrorist regime. We call on the government of Israel and the IDF to thoroughly examine the activities of the organization that will be permitted to provide aid to the Gaza Strip. So as you can see, Hamas is a terrorist organization that certainly does not act foolishly and leverages power capabilities against Israel. Therefore, we must fight the lies and defeat the terror of the Hamas terrorist organization. And we will do that with you. So please, share our content with as many people as possible. And do not forget to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. And now, we're moving on to the regional developments, as the Pentagon has begun deploying a new loitering munition in the Middle East that was copied from a common Iranian design, a move that turns the adversary's technology into a simple yet effective weapon in the hands of the Americans. The Pentagon announced on Wednesday the establishment of Task Force Scorpion Sting, the United States Army's first squadron in the Middle East operating one-way attack drones. The low-cost systems were built by the Arizona defense company Spectre Works, which designed the system by reverse engineering the Iranian Shahad 136 UAV. This UAV is used by Tehran and its affiliate militias to attack American forces and commercial shipping, and is also used by Russia for strikes in Ukraine. The move is an early example of America's new drone dominance initiative, which aims to procure inexpensive drones manufactured by American companies and rapidly transferable to the field. The goal is for every Army platoon to be armed with small attack drones by the end of the fiscal year of 2026. The decision to station the Squadron also comes almost 2 years after an Iranian UAV killed 3 American soldiers at the Jordanian outpost known as Tower 22. So this shift from expensive, complex systems that take years to develop to cheaper and simple systems might change the whole equation in the battlefield in this war against terrorism. The new UAV model FLM 136, also called Lucas, is very familiar and similar to the Shahed 136 and has a triangular wingspan of about 2.4 meters. According to the United States Central Command, it can be launched by various mechanisms, including catapults, rocket-assisted takeoffs, and mobile vehicle systems. The UAV is fully autonomous, relying on sensors and artificial intelligence for navigation with little need for human intervention, and can fly for about 6 hours. The price of each platform is $35,000, which is a significant saving compared to an MQ-9 Reaper UAV, whose price is estimated at $16 million. The move also reflects an Iranian tactic to reverse engineering American UAVs that crashed, such as the CIA's RQ-170 Sentinel. Kalitan Lee, a UAV expert from the Rand Institute think tank, noted that while adversaries like China have struggled to copy complex propulsion technologies, commercially available electronics now make it easier to reverse engineer small UAVs. One more story for this week's comes from Israel's Aircraft Industries, which is one of Israel's largest manufacturing companies. This week, it transferred the first Arrow 3 air defensive systems to German military, completing the first phase of a contract signed just a week before October 7, 2023. More Arrow 3 systems are coming, and training programs have already been completed, which will allow the German soldiers to operate the systems themselves without Israeli assistance. This demonstrates that Israel keeps its commitments to defend the free world even when we're fighting for our own lives. It's also worth mentioning that this contract, the largest Israeli defensive export contract ever at $3.6 billion, is likely to lead to more defensive exports to Germany as it moves to build up its military in response to the war in Ukraine. Also this week, Thailand announced that it is buying Israel's Barak MX air defensive system because everyone in the world has taken note of how well the Israeli air defensive systems worked over the last 2 years. And here at TBN Israel, we will continue to bring you all the truth, and we invite you to continue and spread it with as many people as possible. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to TBN Israel on YouTube. And the most important thing that you should do in this time is to unite in prayer. When you are praying, make sure to pray for wisdom to our leaders. Make sure to pray for the IDF soldiers that are defending us. Pray for our team here at TBN Israel to be safe. And keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.